Hello and welcome to Overcoming Illness. Sorry I was not here last week, but welcome. If you haven't seen the show yet, I'm Paula Denoncourt, your holistic health coach, founder and CEO of Enrich Your Health. Um, I am a holistic health coach who helps people with food allergies, food sensitivities. I've helped quite a bit in the Lyme disease community. And with autoimmune issues. I have ebooks and digital recipe books, things like that are like nut-free, allergy-free, gluten-free, things that are really helpful for people with food allergies and food sensitivities. So if you haven't seen any of the other shows, I highly suggest you go back and watch them. I've had some great guests on here, and I have an amazing guest today as well that have really overcome some amazing different types of illnesses, from cancer to headaches to congestive heart failure, diabetes. Please go back and watch them. These people are absolutely amazing in how they've overcome different illnesses. So today we are going to talk with Melissa Hope, and she's going to tell us how she's experienced chronic migraines and what she's done to overcome them, and maybe still is doing to overcome them and help other clients. She has her own business and helping other clients with that. And I do want to put out a full disclosure before we even get into it. None of this information is meant to heal or cure or treat any illnesses. This is just information to educate you and help you make your own decisions. I am a prayer warrior. I'm a prophetic vessel, and I do say that that's for me. That's what I do. I pray. So everybody's different in what works for you. So with that, I want to welcome Melissa. I'm really excited to have her here and just share her journey and her story. So welcome, Melissa. So let me introduce you. Melissa Hope is a balance empowerment specialist and founder of Conscious Expansions. Melissa is a former international event director who worked with the top Fortune 500 media companies and C-suite executive women. After healing herself from the chronic, debilitating migraines that plagued her for over 10 years, she's dedicated her life to helping others who struggle with similar pain. She's now a certified emotion code practitioner and energy healer. She uses her unique system to help busy women who are struggling to balance the stress of their career, family, and social lives with excruciating pain, frustration, and lack of sleep from their uncontrollable headaches, sleepless nights, and other physical symptoms. Since she lived in pain for so long and is now thriving in her life, she feels honored to show women that healing is possible without medication or surgery. Whether you're trying to reduce your stress, heal from headaches or migraines, or are ready to step fully into your future as your healthiest, happiest you, I believe you made that decision to spend your time with Melissa. So with that, I welcome Melissa once again. Welcome to Overcoming Illness. Melissa, please tell us a little bit about yourself before we even go into some of the questions. Where are you from? Just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into some of the questions of how you started getting headaches and all of that.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Paula. I'm so happy to be here. So thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to sharing with all of you. But I'm based in Los Angeles. I am a native California girl. I grew up in Northern California, and through my previous career in events, I ended up coming down to LA, where a lot of this is based. I'm extremely passionate about energy healing and the work that I do now after, my journey in healing. I love the beach. I love to stay active. And I guess you could say I'm kind of fueled by the sun. I spent earlier today outside just enjoying the sun, and it's a great moment of grounding and fuel for me. So I'm excited to be here today.
Well, thank you again for being on with us. And, we can't see who's on, but I do want to welcome everybody from wherever you're from. It could be morning, afternoon, evening. We welcome you all from whatever part of the world you're in. Unless you comment is how we know if you're on. So tell us a little bit about your journey in healing, and when did the headaches start? And tell us a little bit what was going on in your life when the headaches started, because some of the things we've talked about in other shows, there is always a correlation, which is in your practice, an emotional attachment to some life experiences and things that are going on in our lives as to why we start getting these things like headaches. So tell us about your journey.
Yeah, certainly. So, I suffered, with chronic debilitating migraines and insomnia for over 10 years, as you mentioned. When this all first started, it started with, maybe a headache here and there. The first time I got one, I had no idea what was going on, went down to the ER. The thing with migraines is if you've never, experienced one, a lot of people just think of it as a headache, but it's definitely not. Sensitivity to lights. Sometimes you're stuck in a dark room the last days, and then even, the couple days after, it's like what we call the headache hangover. Your body's just exhausted from going through it. So the first time I experienced one, I, thought there was like something wrong with my brain or something. It was really scary. I went to the ER. They stuck me in a dark room again because I was telling them about the lights, and left with some painkillers, went home, and was kind of laid out on my couch for a couple days, and I didn't really know what to make of it. I was very busy at the time. I was, working in events, and for anybody that works in that area, it can be quite unpredictable, lots of long hours, lots of stress, although, in the end, it can feel fulfilling. So I was quite busy and under a lot of stress at the time. I think the next one that came was maybe a month later. And then from there, it was, maybe at first I was getting them once a month. From there, it then turned into once a week. And then from there, it was, I had more headache days than non-headache days a month. So when this all started to finally dissipate for me, I remember having feelings like I just didn't know what it felt like to be clear-headed, because I was always either with at least a light, dull pain coming down from a headache or in a full-blown migraine mode. So when I was kind of dealing with that, and it got bad, I was seeing doctors, I was seeing neurologists, I was doing everything that I knew of at the time to try and heal. But when you're going through something like that, and it's just like they're throwing another medication at you, and they kind of work for a little and then they don't, it can start to feel really hopeless. I'm sure a lot of other guests share in this feeling that where it's like you feel like you've just totally run out of options, totally hopeless, and that this thing, this illness might be forever ruling your life. So that's the point that I ended up at. And it was, so hard for me to try and, keep my job steady, because even just looking at a screen hurt my head. So I was missing tons of work, and then it felt like working through the weekends to catch up. So it was like there was never really a break. Relationships were difficult. I had friends that really didn't understand what, like I mentioned, what a migraine is. So they would, getting frustrated that I would cancel plans all the time. So I was really unpredictable because I never knew when something like this was going to happen. So that was, extremely discouraging. But fortunately, I ended up discovering energy healing, specifically emotion code and healing touch, which really allowed me to finally get past the migraines and insomnia, get back into balance with my body, my mind. And, now I'm not on any of the medications. There was no surgery involved in my healing, and I feel amazing. I sleep 8 hours a night. I haven't had a migraine in over 10 years.
Wow.
Over 2 years. It's been 2 years. I suffered with them for 10. And, I can tell when I'm slipping back into that area where my body's starting to kind of like run low. And I need to, balance things back out again, so that I don't get back into that full blown migraine state.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what was it? You've kind of touched on this a little bit, but what was it like going through this? I mean, I'm sure it was very frustrating just going to, for those of you who don't know, I suffered from multiple food allergies. So I know it was like trying to get an answer, like what's going on. what can I do to help this? And I do want to welcome Prophetess Rashida, who just hopped on. Thank you for coming on, Rashida. Good to have you here. So go ahead and tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was, it just gets to a place of like, I almost had just lost all hope, and sort of, I almost had an acceptance that this was just going to be the rest of my life. Although I didn't want to, I really didn't want it to come to that point. Like, I didn't want to accept that, but you kind of get to a stage where you've tried everything and nothing's helping. So what I mean by that is, I had done the things with diet, gluten-free, dairy-free, those helped for a while, but then they would just keep coming back. I was on, as I mentioned, I think like 6 different medications. There was a shot in the leg I gave myself every month. I did the Botox, that helps. And all those things help for a period of time, and then they don't. And really what I found, for me at least, is a lot of them were just, masking. It's kind of masking and numbing the pain, but it's not fixing the root issue, the root problem. There's something underlying that was preventing me from healing. I'm going through all these different, techniques and methods, and, I'm not sleeping and I'm getting these headaches. So finally I realized that there must be something else that's happening. So it was a really difficult time in my life. I mean, I know, it was, my relationship suffered. I mean, trying to date was impossible because just, I was always exhausted. And I never knew when I could just schedule something because something might, come up. So it gets to that point where just, you're so frustrated because you feel like you're trying everything. Until then, I found the thing that worked for me, but it can be really lonesome and hopeless, and just very much alone, feeling like no one understands you.
I can definitely see that. Yeah. Now, did any of this run in your family in any way?
So my mom suffered with migraines for a couple years, but nowhere near like mine. She got them when she was 30, and I think by 33 they were gone. Mine started about 29, and then well, no, earlier than that. Mine started about 26, and then until 36. So it was, yeah, sort of in the family, but mine was definitely a way different type of case. Yeah.
They related to hormonal at all? It sounds like it might a little bit.
I definitely think that the hormones played a part in this. I, like monthly, I would certainly experience increased headaches at that time. But since it did end up getting to this point where I always had migraines, it got so hard to kind of even track and measure like what's the trigger, because I felt like everything sort of turned into a trigger for me. But I do know that hormones can definitely play a big role with migraines.
Yeah. Hormones, and for everybody watching, hormones, emotion, and definitely diet. Those are the biggest triggers.
Yeah, certainly.
So tell us a little bit about energy healing, for people out there that don't know what that is.
Yeah. So what is amazing and really exciting to me about energy healing is that energy healing is going to the root of the issue. Instead of using one of, like I mentioned, a kind of a Band-Aid to cover things up. So with energy healing, it's the notion that we're all made of energy. All of us, everything in this life really is at a basic level energy. So even if you were to take your hand and place it under just like an extremely high powered microscope, you would see atoms, and swirling around is little teeny particles of energy. So it's that energy that then vibrates, at the speed of light to make us appear solid. And energy then is the building blocks of us. So it also is what's at the basis of our, emotions, our just the ways that we think and feel. Everything can be dialed into basically at the very basic level energy. So when we're utilizing different forms of energy healing, it's going into that root cause and getting things aligned so that the energy in our body can move freely and flow and do what it's meant to do. almost all cultures have a different way of explaining energy. There's like prana, there's chi, there's, it dates back like 5,000 years ago. You can see in so many of our different cultures and just this study and practice of energy. But your energy is meant to flow. It's meant to, move freely. And when certain things block or there's even overactive energies, that's when you might eventually start to feel a physical symptom.
Mm.
So physical symptoms can often be related back into imbalances in our energy field. And if we don't listen to these signals, essentially, that the body tells us, something's off, something's not right, the signals get louder and louder until we listen. So
Right.
even in my story, it's like started with headaches or, some sleepless nights until eventually I was full blown with, headaches all the time and just not sleeping until essentially I kind of released a lot of trapped energy and started really honestly working on my stress. And I was able to then finally get past all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that energy healing, energy medicine can oftentimes be, for many people, the solution you didn't realize you were looking for. Sometimes if we're feeling blocked or, blocked by something we can't define, we keep ending up in the same patterns, it's oftentimes because there's something misaligned. And just one more thing that I'll say about this that I find very interesting, but to touch on the emotional aspect of it, one of the modalities that I became certified with is emotion code. And that's what really actually helped me overcome my migraines. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a practice where we identify past trapped emotions and release them. And the way that this can totally, affect somebody and actually be causing headaches or migraines is if you, had something traumatic happen to you, a rough experience, even heartache, just any of those things.
Yeah.
Those are all energies. And so if we don't deal with them correctly, will get stuck in your energy field. And it's those blocks that can then fester and grow until you actually deal with them and release them. They can also shape the way you think. If you had your heartache, your heart hurt repeatedly, as a child or even any time in your life, that's going to shape the way you look, at your future relationships. Are you worried then about about trust or, things like that? Because so until we kind of deal with these things, it shapes our future.
I Yeah, I totally agree. I've actually done a talk a couple of times on the emotions and illness. And one big one is like a lot of times we get tension in our shoulders or the back of the
Yes.
neck. And I always say, well, you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. So,
Mm-hmm.
I just say, give it to God, release
Mm-hmm.
it. You've got to release it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a common one with the headaches. Like
yeah,
I, went through all physical therapy and everything trying to fix that pain in my neck and shoulders. And then once I kind of dealt with my stress levels and actually, turned to energy healing, it wasn't actually a physical thing. It kind of went away.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you think your biggest stress was that contributed to the headaches?
Hmm.
The job?
So
What was it?
yeah, it was definitely related to my job.
Okay.
And it was, it was really interesting because I had a pattern of taking these positions and working extremely hard. I put my heart and soul into what I do and take pride in my work like many of us do.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And in my past, I was, and still a little bit today, but especially in the events industry, and I was working with such a senior audience, C-suite women, and it's there's a lot of stress and pressure involved. And I was working internationally. I was working in the U.S. and Europe, so there was tons of travel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like I think my body was totally confused on what time zone I was in. I would, if I was here, I might be waking up early to speak with somebody in France or Switzerland because of the time
Ooh,
change,
yeah.
and then making up later in the day, working later because like my morning had to, be put to that or whatever. So it was a continuous cycle. And the thing about stress too that's really interesting is that, you know, stress is a reaction. So it's not a thing, but it's more so a reaction to how we're dealing with something. So if we have tools in place to be able to handle that, pressure and that much work, not everybody's going to develop migraines, or not everybody's going to have those issues. But the problem is when we don't have our own, self-care plans and, stress management and things like that, that then it can really kind of get stuck and start, an issue that will can eventually cause a physical symptom. Yeah.
Yeah, I call it fight or flight. So for me, I don't know if you know this, but I worked in a prison for 22 years. So the stress
Mhm.
of that job caused me to get ill. So
Yeah.
it was a couple things. It was the stress was making me get multiple food allergies, but it was a few things, like I'd hold everything in because I
Mhm.
keep my voice there. So it was a few different things that went on there, but definitely emotion was related, and holding on to the place was very negative. It was a prison,
Yeah.
just holding that
Mhm.
negative energy. Oh Lord.
Mhm.
So a lot of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of the biggest shifts that you had to overcome in your migraines? Did you change it? So I'll just say this for people listening who don't know me, and you don't really know me either. One thing I did do at my job was switch job positions for a
Mhm.
little while. And then I had to go back to my old position for 3 more years, but that's a whole nother story.
Mhm.
But, those are some things you can do. You can change job positions, get rid of your
Mhm.
job altogether, do another job completely, whatever it is. So, what was it for you, Melissa? What helped you? To
Yeah. I think there were a couple things, that really helped. I think, you know, things like really paying attention to just the basics in terms of my sleep hygiene, my diet, all of those things I think had to be really dialed in so that my body had as much energy as it could to
yeah.
handle and deal with not only the stress that was around me that I was interacting with, but also just the stress on my body from the headaches and the migraines. It's like your body's continuously in that, as you said, fight or flight mode.
Hmm.
So I do think it was really important to look at those two things. But the biggest shifts that I had to make were really in understanding my energy levels and understanding, really what self-care is to me, and what I need to be healthy and not put myself back in that place. So it was really hard for me to, get used to slowing down and taking breaks. I was a continuous go, go, go type of person. And so even, the beginning of the pandemic, well, I would never say that thousands of people getting sick is a good thing. But I do try to look for what I can learn from every situation.
Hmm.
There's a message here. And for me, the experience of the pandemic was a huge learning experience in how to slow down for me. I had been needing to, and then I was suddenly forced to. And I ended up, starting to build my own company. So it was like I kept finding ways to keep busy even while the world was totally shutting down. And I finally had to learn, how some days like you need to relax, and maybe it's doing nothing and giving your body a break, giving your mind a break. And I would, at the beginning, it was, a practice. Like I would be antsy. I live in an apartment complex with a pool. So I would, try and go down and lay at the pool. And it's like, I would be like, I would keep looking at my phone, like, oh, is there, I don't know what I was checking for. There was nothing going on. But it's like that energy of just like, go, 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 and always kind of needing to be doing something that was really hard for me to overcome. And once I finally, kind of learned some tools be able to balance my energy, and with continued energy work, be able to embrace the calm, that was huge for me. The other things, that I will mention too, just even in terms of the job, well, that whole thing stopped, at the beginning of the pandemic. There were no events. So that also was really, important for me to experience that time of just like a full rest. And I will tell you, I think it was 3 months in, and I woke up one day and I was like, wow, I feel rested today. Like, I
Mhm.
know, like I had a different feeling, like, and I had been sleeping, my sleep started improving once I started working on my stress and paying attention to my energy and all of that. But it really, I feel, took 3 months before I finally felt like caught up on sleep. And that's just showed me like how important it is sometimes. And I know not everybody has the luxury of, having to take a break for a couple months, but working on our sleep, working on resting when we can, all of those things so that we have enough inside to then deal with what's outside.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. We need some
Hmm.
rest time. In fact, I'm taking a couple days off from work too in a week or so. I just need some self care, some time for me. When
Hmm.
you're on business and plus I work a full time job, there's not much me time, and you need that one.
Hmm.
You've got to have
We
some. It's just not good for you to just go go go. And you're living in Los Angeles. I mean, that is.
hmm.
I've never lived
Yeah.
there, visited for a very short time, and I could just feel. You talk about energy. It's
Yeah.
constant, like fast paced, like craziness. And I came from Massachusetts, so that
Uh-huh.
is too. But I think Los Angeles was probably times 10.
It
Like you said,
is.
there, just see, I could just see like the cars, the 6 lane highways, and could just see it
Hmm.
and feel it just being there. Even just
Yeah.
trying to cross the street even was like,
Hmm.
oh my god, I had the right of way and they still wanted to kill me.
Yeah,
Just
it is.
crossing was just like, so I can only imagine the stress level just living in Los Angeles alone, let alone whatever job you do. So
Yeah. There's
yeah,
lots of pressure around that. And, I call myself a balance empowerment specialist now because that is something that I've found is just a lot of people as well have this idea of balance, and it's not what you think, and it's not the same for everyone. And it's kind of just this practice of being able to work with what we have, like where we're at currently, because my balanced way of living now probably is not going to be my balanced way of living in a couple years.
mhm,
And just kind of depending, like a lot of women that job, kids, family, husband, like trying to have a social life, it can really start to add up and feel like a lot. So it's being able to find these pockets of time, and whether it is even telling ourselves like this month is going to be wild, it's going to be crazy. I'm really not going to have that downtime, but maybe next month, like you are, I'll schedule like a day if I can,
yeah,
or a couple days to just kind of come back and just kind of continuously reassessing where we're at and what we need to do to be able to, when we get too far in one direction, bring
yeah,
ourselves back.
yeah. Like I said, I highly suggest it. You really need, like you were saying earlier, you spent a little time by the pool. I did too. I went
Yeah.
down to the pool and I just swam for a little bit. I work from home. I'm in this cooped up in this room all day. Got to get out. You got to get sunshine. You got to get your vitamin D, and just movement and feeling better. It makes feel so much better.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
so tell us, does your work help with other than migraines, and have you experienced anything else besides migraines, or was it just migraines for you?
So for me, yeah, it was migraines and insomnia. And those were both the things. And the thing is, like, one contributed to the other. If you're not sleeping, you're going to have headaches. And if you have headaches, it might be hard to sleep. So for me, I felt like that was, essentially a downward spiral. I also suffered with like hives and things like that. My body was just reacting in odd ways. I would get allergies to things like I didn't know what they were. I would eat something I've eaten all the time and have like a facial swelling, like a swollen lip or something. Um, so there was a lot going on for me in addition to the
Mm-hmm.
migraines. But essentially with my work, so going through this experience, as mentioned before, it really just gave me not even just like a passion to share this, but almost an obligation, because I just remember how I was in that place, we talked about in the beginning, where I'm sure so many of you in the audience can relate, where you're just like hopeless and you feel like you're doing everything. So when I found something that worked for me, that I had zero idea about, this whole other world of energy healing, like what is that? And it worked. I got certified in, the modalities that help me, and really have felt in like an obligation to want to share this. And so the modalities are, it's emotion code and healing touch. And emotion code, as I mentioned, is this amazing practice where we can go in and find, you know, trapped energies from our what we call emotional baggage and such, and release them. We can get down to the exact year that something happened, like that when you were age 3, an incident happened that made you feel abandoned. So it's really powerful. And then the other thing that I work with is called healing touch, which is very similar to Reiki. And it's a practice of balancing the energy in the body using our hands. So we have 7 main energy centers in our body, oftentimes referred to as, the chakras, or just even the energy centers or whatnot. And from these main energy centers are where where everything stems from. So like your root, for example, is kind of what helps you stay grounded, connected to your home, those things. And then it goes up from there. So being able to ensure that those chakras are opened and balanced is going to help you kind of, again, help that energy flow freely, and allow you and your body to self-heal. Our bodies are meant to self-heal. When you get a cut, like on your hand or your knee, it maybe turns into a scab, and then it heals. Or when you start running, you naturally start to breathe heavier. And these are just examples of the body self-regulating and essentially healing. And that's really what it's meant to do. So it's when we have these blocks or other things that we can't identify, is when it's harder for the energy to go where it needs to go, and it might not be able to get there, which is what causes these physical symptoms. So this type of work, releasing stuck energy, balancing your energy, all of that works well with almost, any physical symptoms, because as we discussed, energy really is at the root of all healing. And so although I will say it's not a one and done type of thing, it's not drop your other programs and just do energy healing, it's not stop taking medication, it's none of that, but it is an assisted process that can go well with what you're doing. Even in the example of migraines, like I had a lot of, it took some time to be able to get off all of the medications, but you need them to kind of get through what you're dealing with at that time. And then once your body can assimilate, perhaps maybe you'll need them, but it can go hand in hand with healing in a lot of ways. And so I always, it's like, if you're blocked by something that you can't define, if you feel like you've tried everything and nothing's working, it might be that there's something blocked on an energetic level that, once shifted, could allow your body to then finally, react appropriately to the medications or the other things that you've been doing that haven't been as successful as you have liked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that almost sounds like you had an autoimmune issue like Lyme disease, because that's similar symptoms.
Yeah.
The food allergies, you had some
Wow.
similar there. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Very.
Yeah. A lot of people have Lyme or an autoimmune issue,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So how has your life changed since overcoming these migraines?
Yeah. So, I mean, my life has changed drastically. I just, even going back to kind of how things were before, my life was completely ruled by these migraines and headaches. So, it was hard for me to make plans to do anything. Dating was not in the equation. Luckily, double-edged sword, luckily the job, I should say, even though it was, I think, a big stemming point of the migraines, like, I was able to kind of, with events, you're always working. So if I was missing time here, I'd made up for it later. so in that sense, that kind of worked all right, but it got to a point where, like, the job, they weren't going to deal with that for very much longer, so things were really difficult. And today, I actually, I mean, things are completely different. I was able to build a relationship, with somebody, which was something I had a big goal that I wanted, for a really long time. And now I've been dating an amazing man for over a year, which is great. I
Mm.
have the capacity to be there, I think, for myself and for somebody else. Um, which was not an option before. I also, I've started my own company, which I'm just so excited about, Conscious Expansions, where I help a lot of, other women and men, but mostly women, with similar issues where they may feel blocked by something they can't define. I do see a lot of women with migraines and, other people that are just looking for some help, either with incorporating more balance in their life and reducing their stress, or it's, healing in another way, from something like they can't quite define. So my life has completely changed, and just I'm no longer ruled by these crazy headaches. I sleep 8 hours a night, and it's like I almost can't even picture what it was like then, because I feel such a drastic change now.
Mm.
And what I really love about everything I've learned going through that whole transformation is that, um, I still now even, I have taken on some side event jobs just because I think there's this passion in me that still really loves those projects, and working at it from a completely different point of view.
Right.
It's a continual practice in boundaries, and it's a continual practice in just self, evaluating, so I can regulate what needs to be done, and prepare for when things get busy, and prepare the time to come back to self and relax, following. So I think it's just, I mean, my life is so completely different now, and I'm so grateful to have learned everything that I have going through that entire experience and healing journey.
That's awesome. Can you tell us an example of a client that you've helped?
Yeah, certainly. So let's see who comes to mind. Well, there's a woman that I helped, whose name maybe I'll just leave out, you know, for because I haven't asked her yet. But she came to me and she was struggling really bad, with migraines herself. And I asked her, what had she been doing to, that's always how we start, it's finding out what have you been doing, what's worked, what hasn't worked, so that I can, help you, and really get a feel for where you're at. So she had, same thing. The doctors, her, trying different medications, but she really didn't like how they made her feel. So that wasn't a big for her. But she said she tried, a lot of different holistic services, and was taking a lot of like vitamins to supplement and kind of bring nourishment. There are a lot of vitamins actually that are good for those with migraines. So she was working through that. There's magnesium, coenzyme 10, there's like feverfew, there's a whole bunch of them. And so she's working through that. And once we started working together, I think it was after our third session, it was just like music to my ears when we got on. And I said, how are you doing? And she said, it's actually been 2 weeks and I haven't had a migraine. And she was getting them multiple times a week. And so it was just that right away, these realizations where we were able to shift and move her energy, and then also start working on her boundaries actually with work, and incorporating a little bit more self-care, so that she's able to finally, start feeling like herself again. And once she got, more energy back for herself, it was easier for her to continue on this trajectory of, incorporating a self-care routine and exercising her boundaries with work, so that she didn't get so overstressed that she was ending up with headaches.
Mm.
So it's a lot of similar stories. I'll share another one just that's
Yeah.
kind of different, but also a very interesting situation, if you're not familiar with the work of energy healing. But I had a couple come to me because their son, who was 7 years old, was suffering from, he had experienced a seizure. They were totally freaked out. totally freaked out. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody go through that. I unfortunately have, and it is just probably one of the more terrifying things to ever witness. So they had to watch their son go through that. He was telling me, the father in our session, that he had been sleeping in the same room as the son, or, because he was scared something might happen overnight. I mean, he was dealing with a lot of it, but outside of having experienced this seizure, this child was having crazy behavioral issues at school. So he could never sit still in the assemblies. He was always fighting with other kids. He was having a really hard time at school. He was only 7, and they were scared that he was going to have to, need a lot of extra help, and to go to like a special school where he could have more attention. And he was already at school with his brother, so that was, they just wanted him to be happy where he was. um, so what's interesting about energy healing is a child doesn't need to, be even present. It's just permission from the adult. So after 4 sessions of kind of working, on the child remotely and helping him to release a lot of just trapped emotions that he experienced as a very young child. I mean, he was only 7, so it was from before that. He actually was able to overcome his behavioral issues, and the couple reached out to me, 2 weeks after our 4th session to let me know the principal had contacted them and said, he's fixed. Like, our son is fixed. And, there
Wow.
were no more issues in school and nothing. And it was just really beautiful because they didn't want the child to feel like he was broken or something was wrong. So they didn't want him to have to go through all this. And we were able to kind of tap into his energy and help him. And he wasn't even, a part of the experience. So that was equally spectacular.
That's awesome, especially with kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough with kids. Very
Mm-hmm.
much. Hmm.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. So tell us, let's see, how much time do we have? Okay, so tell us some tips that you can give to the audience for them to be able to help themselves. What are some tips
Yeah,
you give?
of course. So I think the first tip that I would recommend, a lot of people, is just to come back to the basics. So this can sound so simple, yet often so overlooked. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people who are struggling with illness are working on, the next treatment that they can find, or just kind of even getting through, like, they're, it's hard to even just kind of survive oftentimes. So we forget to just kind of reevaluate. Maybe we thought about our sleep hygiene before, but it it gets, we thought about it, let's say, like last month, and then you kind of get beyond it. You're not sleeping very well. So it's kind of thinking about, like, what are the things that I can do, even just at a basic level, in terms of sleep hygiene. If we aren't sleeping well, our body doesn't have the energy to do what it needs to do. So there's simple things you can do, like no screen time before bed, blackout curtains, only using your bed for sleep, all of those things. But if you're doing all of those things and you're still having issues, there could be something else. And when I say basics, I mean even just your diet. Are you eating enough? Are you not? Are you eating frequently? Are you eating too much processed food? Maybe drinking too much? Would gluten free or dairy free have helped? I mean, I'm sure you can speak to that a
Yeah.
lot deeper. But even not being a health coach, I see a lot of people, and it's just, I want to remind them just of the basics, because it's looking at sleep, at diet, at how we go through our daily life, and just remembering to come back and take inventory of this, after some time has passed, because things change. And what maybe small shifts might help give you more comfort and the energy to then kind of deal with this extremely stressful situation that you're dealing with your headaches, or whatnot. So um, even it's just, like, what keeps you up at 3 a.m.? Is this anxiety or depression? Like, who are you thinking about? What thoughts are you thinking about at night? Have you ever stopped to think about why you are overeating, and all of that? And the more that we can get to the bottom of these questions and kind of release the root causes of these things, it will really start to create a ripple effect throughout the rest of your life, um, and kickstart that healing. So, um, if an example I can give of this is just even going back to what I mentioned at the beginning. But if you grew up with a lot of heartache, and like even if we experience something at a stressful time, this is going to shape the way that we think and feel moving forward. It almost creates a lens that we're looking through. So the more that we can do to release these things at a basic level, the more energy and nourishment our body will have. And if you still are having trouble with this, that's where I would recommend trying to see somebody, myself or someone else, that can help you find what these root causes
Yeah.
are. The next tip that I could share is to look at your self-care, and especially, to take it one step further, like considering your boundaries, and do you have any? Um, the biggest myth that I hear when I mention self-care is I don't have time. And coming from somebody who was just overworked and overstressed and had to, make the time until the world stopped. But I did, have to make the time at the beginning. Like I always tell them, whether you want to hear this or not, everybody has time. Even 5 minutes here or there is better than nothing. And so it's oftentimes just kind of looking at our boundaries, with work and with family and social life, because even when it comes to kids, we can't be the best mother or parental figure, or be there if we don't have the energy ourselves to, like, if our cup isn't full, we have nothing to share. So whether it's fitting in 5 minutes a day, waking up 3 minutes, 5 minutes earlier to just have a couple moments of quiet and set your intention for the day. A lot of people tell me, well, I don't want to meditate. And you don't have to meditate to do self-care. A lot of people, they like to take a hot shower, or is it that you need to just make sure you're getting out, like you mentioned, getting outside a couple, like at least once a day? Do you work from home, and are you just in front of your computer and get no
Mhm.
kind of sunlight? So it's really taking some time to examine what self-care you can just fit into your life. Um, a lot of people also will struggle with accountability in this area. So, um, for example, I'll talk to somebody and they say, I'm going to start meditating for 30 minutes a day, every day, starting tomorrow. Like, okay, that sounds great. That would be awesome. That would be really helpful, but you don't meditate. So for me, when I first started, like sitting quiet for 5 minutes was horrible. So it can then become an extra point of stress. I can't sit for 30 minutes. What's wrong with me? And then I don't want to do it the next day. So again, it's just coming back into how can I make a plan that makes sense for me, and then how can I be accountable to that? And that's where, having somebody like a coach or something that just checks in with you once a week and says, how'd your week go? Okay, you weren't able to do it any days this week. So how can we change it then? Obviously, meditating for 30 minutes a day isn't the right plan for you. What
Mm.
could be a good plan? Energy work is really supportive when it comes to those that have trouble with self-care. I definitely recommend finding some type of self-care that works for you, but with the process of energy healing, using Reiki and other hands-on healing, which also, by the way, works, at a distance. I see a lot of clients through Zoom, but it allows you to regulate, your nervous system, and you will experience calm, and you'll experience an entire system reset. So with continued practice, the more that we're resetting our nervous system, the more that we're kind of smoothing out this energy, you'll notice that you'll start to create harmony and abundance just within your body and within your life. So I have a client, for example, Nico. I've shared her story before, so this is fine to share, but she's awesome. She's a health coach herself, but she also has just opened like a hip trendy restaurant in Scottsdale. I mean, she's got a lot going on. She's got a lot of moving pieces. But we'll meet from time to time, and we work on her energy, and she always tells me that afterwards, she's happy, she eats well, she does all the things, but just by coming in and having these resets, she always feels at least 60 to 75% less stressed after our sessions, to the point that it's like the sleep that night is a really deep, nourishing sleep. And she says that, when, like, the restaurant industry and all of that, she's able to deal with it a lot easier after kind of having these moments of reset. So whatever self-care is right for you is the right form of self-care. But yeah, first two tips are definitely just looking at your basics, sleep, diet, water intake, and then looking at, some type of self-care, and how can you fit that in, even if it's like 5 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
The third tip that I would recommend is getting your stress under control. I mean, stress has come up in this session a lot of times. I know I would not be surprised. I'm sure I'm counting on the fact that it's come up, with a lot of your other episodes as well.
Mm-hmm.
But even just as it relates to migraines, the American Headache Society, I believe, like their last study published says 4 out of 5 people with migraines report stress as their number one trigger. I've noticed in my life it was my number one. And with all the women I work with, stress is the number one trigger. And even without the energy healing, if we can get their stress down, which oftentimes takes some external support, they'll start noticing less headaches already as it is. So there's a lot of mistakes that people can make in areas like stress management, things like self-medicating, developing addictive behaviors, overworking, over analyzing, over planning, overdoing. All of these things, like the over is what can create more stress. And a lot of them, you don't realize that. You might think you're, taking all these necessary steps to kind of help yourself, but sometimes it's really slowing down. And so with all of this, I always, I like to remind people, which I mentioned before, that, stress is really just a reaction. So it's a reaction to a situation, a person, an experience, because you and I might experience the same situation and I might leave it feeling extremely stressed out. And you were just like, oh, well, we got a flat tire, big deal. And I'm like freaking out because there was a flat tire. So it really is a practice of how we deal with situations, people, and places so that it doesn't create that fight or flight within us. So how can we create, how can you create a plan in your life to be able to, I like to say flow with the river instead of, swimming upstream with what you've got. I really think that those 3 things are a great place to start. And of course, if you're having trouble with any of them, looking for external support in the form of a coach, in the form of energy healing, all of that is, can be very beneficial.
Yeah, I agree. I just say, you got to learn to perceive things differently. Like
Hmm.
even for example, say you were lost for 2 hours, you couldn't find where you were going. Well, maybe you
Yeah.
just avoided an accident,
Yeah.
A lot of do. Like I that's happened to me. I got lost. I'm like, oh my God, where am I going? I can't find my way. And then I'll see like this huge accident on the highway where I would have been if I was going the right direction. So
Yeah.
I call that divine intervention, things like that.
Yep.
But yeah, learn to perceive things differently. Like even for myself, like I told you, I switched job positions where I worked,
Hmm.
and even when they did ship me back to where I came from, I went from going from dispatch. I worked in a prison for 22 years. So I was a dispatcher. Then I worked as a secretary, administrative assistant for 6 years. But then I got shipped back to dispatch because of budget cuts. So, but when I was back in dispatch, I was working a different shift. I was 3 to 11 before that. After that, it was 7 to 3. There were more people on with me. Wasn't as stressful. 7 to 3 is a
Hmm.
different stress. It was like phones were busy, but 3 to 11, I was always on by myself. I had to handle everything myself. We had riots, we had hangings, we had escapes. I didn't have all that on 7 to 3. And
Mm.
I just learned to perceive it differently. There were a lot of people around me. I was studying health because of what was going on with me, becoming
Hmm.
a health coach. So I was sharing some health tips with them. None of them would hire me, but it's getting through to them. So I was there for a reason. I learned to perceive it
Yeah.
differently. I want to stay there forever? No, but I did learn to perceive it differently. Like, why am I here? What's my purpose? So just those are my tips. What is your purpose in what you're going through? Even with
Hmm.
head, what is the reason behind it? Do you need to take a break? Do you need to
Hmm.
help For people with headaches, maybe you just have to experience it because you're meant to help someone else with it.
Yeah.
There's lots of reasons. Ask yourself that why, whatever illness you're going through, whether it's migraines, food allergies, cancer, autoimmune, what's the purpose behind it? Are you experiencing this because you need to help someone else or help many people? Um,
Hmm.
or maybe you need people to take care of you. You're the nurturer all the
Yeah.
time, taking care of family, husband,
Yeah.
whatever. There's so many different reasons. That's my homework to you guys.
Hmm. Hmm.
Solve these questions. So with that, I do want to ask Melissa, please tell us how people can reach you and anything about your business, how they can find you if they have questions. And if anybody has questions while she's going over that, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to you before the end of the broadcast. So go ahead,
Yes.
you two.
Thank you so much. So, my company is called Conscious Expansions, and I can be reached at www.consciousexpansions.com. If you just click to send a message, I will gladly get back to you. It goes to my email inbox, and I would love to connect with any of you that way. So, that's my website, my business, as I mentioned. I have a passion for helping women who, basically are struggling in the similar areas that I went through. And my experience really fueled me to have this deep seated obligation, yearning, passion, whatever you want to call it, to share what I've learned and help others heal and, get to whatever their happiest, healthiest, you is. So, it started out by helping, women who are just really struggling with migraines and headaches that were so painful. It really affected, their job, relationships, and everything else. And I would help them reduce their pain so they could feel more peace and balance in their bodies and lives without medication or surgery. And that has, since expanded. So I help women in all areas. A lot of women that are just also overstressed, overworked, and need some help coming back to self, developing, those tools and things that they can then integrate into their lives, after our course of working together. So I would love to speak with any of you and answer, any of your questions further. If you want to go into that, you can reach me at my website, consciousexpansions.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for being here. I just want to let everyone know if you're not comfortable putting anything out in the open in the chat, that's fine. You can reach out to me. I'm easily reachable either by Facebook Messenger, IG Messenger. That's the easiest way to reach me. Or if you go to my website, you can text me. I may not answer the text right away. We can set up a time through the text to chat. But that's a good way to reach me as well. So once again, I offer digital ebooks, recipe books. If you are going through migraines and you need help with diet, my recipes can help with that as well because they're not processed foods, low sugar, all the triggers, that trigger migraines. So, you can get dairy free, like I said, low sugar, less processed foods. Those are all triggers. But there's so many different things. I'll just leave you on this note that can contribute. So in my last show, we talked about there were a couple of different things. It was hereditary, it was mold toxicity. So there was a lot of different things going on there that could contribute to that person's migraines. So look at your environment, look at what you're using for products, look at your diet, look at your job, or your life in general. Maybe it's your marriage, maybe you're not married, maybe it's money. It can be a lot of different things. That's your homework assignment. If you're going through something like that, sit down and what do you think is contributing? Look at it this way. What's giving me a headache? you know,
Hmm.
Journal it. When do you get the headache? Is it when you clean the house? Is it when you talk to somebody? It could be your mother. I mean, it could be
Hmm.
start to journal these things. If you don't want to write it down, I was bad at that myself. You've got recorders on your phone now. Record it. Record what you eat. If you feel like you got a headache after you eat, All these different things can help, and a coach, of course, can help you structure that. With that, it is 8 o'clock, so I do want to mention to everybody, we're on here every Sunday for the most part. Hopefully we won't have any more cancellations, but every Sunday for the most part at 7 p.m. I am looking for more guests that are overcoming illness. Could be a practitioner, could be a minister, could be an apostle, it could be a spouse. It doesn't matter. Either you've gone through illness, you're overcoming an illness, going through it, anything to do with illness. I want you as my guest and what you're going through. And I am going to be looking for sponsors, so please reach out to me for that. Once again, Melissa, thank you so much for coming on today. This was awesome. If you guys have any questions, reach out to me or Melissa directly, or if you just want to go through her, feel free. So thank you, everyone, and we will wrap it up and see you next Sunday on Overcoming Illness. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Melissa.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.